Welcome everybody to our Easter holiday quiz. Mark is here from Archeo Soup, and we're going to be talking about the history of Easter, the history of customs surrounding Easter, the Easter Bunny, all the good stuff. We are not going to be talking too much about the Passion because we'll leave that to other people. But Passion comes from passio, which obviously means in Latin means suffering. So in case anybody's wondering why it's called Passion, there's your answer, and that's all we're going to say about it.
Okay.
Mark has his pen and paper ready.
Yep.
And as always, anything you hear here is very detailed and researched, and we are going to give you all the sources at the end, as always. So if you have any questions, wait till the end. I guarantee you they'll probably be answered. Okay.
Extra reading.
And
Yep.
the
Yep.
joy, the real joy of Easter, Mark.
The reason for the
The
season.
reason for the season.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I know you're going to get this one because we've discussed it several times. Question the very first. Where did the name of Easter come from?
Well, I've heard that it comes from the name of a Saxon goddess.
Who told us that? Who told us that?
Someone called Bede.
Yes, very good. The venerable Bede, the jerk. I say jerk because he gave us literally no other information.
No.
Except he says the word Yostra. And he says that it has to do with Yostra Monath, which is the Anglo-Saxon for Easter month.
Okay.
What
Yep.
that means, though, we can only guess. Possibly a goddess of dawn. Professor Ronald Hutton writes that a number of German scholars cast doubt upon its utility during the 19th and early 20th centuries, although not with sufficient evidence to disprove it in turn. Two facts seem to emerge from this discussion. One is that versions of the name given by Bede were used widely among speakers in Germanic languages, which is true. There were different other Germanic tribes that used similar words to describe this. And two is that the Anglo-Saxon Istra, signifying both the festival and the season of spring, is associated with a set of words in various Indo-European languages signifying the dawn, or possibly also a goddess associated with dawn. There are other theories as well that this that it might have been a series of gods or a series of spirits because of how the word is used. While it's agreed upon that Yostra might have been a goddess that represented the dawn, we actually have zero historical or even archaeological evidence for her worship. That's it. I think a couple of years ago, there was a possible discovery about not necessarily a shrine, but some evidence of worship, but not her, but a series of goddesses like her.
Okay.
That's all we have. That's it.
Okay. Well, I mean, the thing is, I was saying that because I thought you were going to be like, no, but no. Okay, fair. I've given us both a point there, because I think
No,
we both
you got
deserve
that
one.
one. You got that one.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yes,
Fair enough.
because
Um,
it comes from Bede, and that's it. What he
yeah.
meant by his one line of telling us that it was Istra, we have no idea, no
Hmm.
idea, and that's why it's so severely frustrating. Because you go, couldn't you have told it? Like, if it was a really important holiday, was a
Yeah.
really important festival, couldn't you have
Hmm.
told us
Hmm.
one other line, how they celebrate it, what happens,
Yeah.
if it was such a big spring holiday? But he says absolutely nothing.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, okay, well, what do you make of people who expand upon that and
We're
say
getting
that?
to that.
Oh, okay, okay.
We're getting to that and the whole expansion.
This is why I do the quiz for the sternness. Yeah.
Raise your hand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Question the second. When
Hmm.
was the first Easter, the first formal Easter celebration?
Ooh.
This is a tough one.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm gonna go 100 AD.
Oh, you're so close, so
Oh,
close.
okay.
First formal Easter celebration is recorded 2nd century.
Uh,
It started being called Easter rather than Pesach or Pascha around the 7th or 8th centuries. It's very varying. Up to the 8th century AD, there is no uniform method for determining the holiday.
okay.
And then really wasn't until the Council of Nicaea in 325 that people finally accepted it's called Easter. This is what it is, etc.
Okay.
But we do
Interesting.
have records of people celebrating it around 2nd century.
Right. I won't ask a follow-up because you might touch on some of those things. So I'm learning.
You can, but I'll say we'll come back to it later. Question the third.
Okay.
Here's one we're going to get canceled for, Mark. When did Jesus actually die?
Oh,
This is something that even biblical scholars.
yeah, I can imagine. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go with 32, the Common Era.
Ooh, I could see why. Yes. Okay, give
Yeah.
yourself half a point.
Okay. Okay.
The answer is we don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Some Bible scholars give it for the exact date of April 3rd. Some Bible scholars give it for
Oh,
the exact date of April 7th, around 30 AD. You were very, very close.
okay.
But this is calculated based on only one gospel and has absolutely no basis in reality. We don't even know
Right.
how old Jesus was when he died. We suppose he was 30 or 33. Only Luke says he was 30, but one
Okay.
of the gospels says he was not yet 50. So people
Okay.
believe his ministry was 3 years, but again, we don't know that for sure. Some sources say only 1 year because of his one trip to Jerusalem. But in John, it says he was there for 3 Passovers. So
Mm.
possibly 3 years. According
Mm.
to the great and wonderful Dr. Helen Bond, his death must have happened sometime after 26 AD because of Pontius Pilate's gubernatorial office. So you were so
Mm.
close. You were so close.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometime after 26 AD. That's it.
Okay.
The Gospel of Mark says Thursday on Passover is when Jesus was taken.
Mm-hmm.
But John says it was not Passover, but the day before Passover. They were preparing for Passover.
I see.
And then Jesus was buried on Passover. Dr. Helen Bond continues to say, most people have a harmonized view of when all these things happened, but that's not like that in any of the Gospels. When you
No.
see them as 4 separate stories, you realize that there's been a huge amount of embellishment. Actually, we have very little idea about what happened apart from the bare bones of the story, which is that Jesus was put to death by a Roman governor. That's it.
Okay.
Much of the detail is elaboration by the gospel writers in pursuit of particular aims to show something about Jesus, his
Yeah.
relationship to Jewish authorities or Rome.
Mm. Well, and
That's
in
it.
that sense, I've always appreciated the concept, conceptually, of the reworking of a Passover meal into the Last Supper, into communion. Is this
Yeah.
sort of I've always found that to be quite interesting. And as you say, it's so neat and so tidy that it
Yeah.
it could be something that comes out of the telling and being very charitable here, not being cynical, a desire to remember the moment, shall we say?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's what it
yeah.
seems like, because most of those things that link it to, say it was a Passover feast, are later Gospels, whereas the
Mm,
earlier ones say that it was a day before they were preparing for
yeah,
Passover.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Also, I mean, it's also, if you look at a lot of the stories and the depictions, it's missing a lot of the key elements. There's no lamb, which is a big thing for
Hmm. Hmm.
Passover, right?
Yeah.
No eggs, also a big thing for Passover. There's
No
nothing in
salty
their,
water.
right, exactly. There's nothing in their
Mm,
feast that says they are actually preparing
no,
for, as well.
no.
I think in some of the Gospels it mentions them breaking bread, which you would
Mm,
not do for Passover.
mm,
So it's very possible that it was probably before.
yeah.
It, that
Unless by breaking the bread, he literally whacked the leaven out of it. Like,
that would
oh
be
my
a
God, you broke the bread. Yeah. Yes, I did. Like,
turning
sorry.
matzah into funk.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good. Give yourself at least half a point because you were
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very close there.
Okay, cool.
So, when was Christ arisen?
I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna go from the calendar, I guess, 3 days later. So on the following Sunday.
Rah!
Yeah.
We don't know. We have no
Okay.
idea if it
Yeah.
happened at all. Some archaeologists say that the description of Jesus's tomb, given the Gospels, doesn't add up with Jewish burial practices at the time.
No.
So some scholars believe that Jesus' body might have just been stolen, which was
Hmm.
not uncommon because grave robbing did happen. Some claim that he might have been alive and just left to keep his followers from deifying him, but there's absolutely no evidence for that. Paul was the first person to claim that Jesus was resurrected in 1 Corinthians 15, claiming that Jesus appeared to him. Some stories say that Jesus' followers went down to the tomb on the Sunday after Jesus was buried, and it was empty. And the account comes from Mark the Gospel, not from you, which was written around 70 AD, an account which Paul never mentioned. So that there's the whole tradition in Greek, Roman, and Jewish writings of holy people being taken up to heaven into another world. People like Moses, other figures like Moses, Elijah, Romulus as well in Roman canon. But the notion of a god dying for their followers and being resurrected is not really new. It's not a new idea. Many gods have died and returned. Odin, even though this Havamal might be Christianized, Odin sacrificed himself in the Havamal, but we also have Osiris. Osiris, the Egyptian deity who was killed by his brother. He was completely dismembered, and then his wife Isis saved his pieces. And she fished his penis out of a fish's mouth, which I think is great. And she resurrects him from the dismembered parts. Take that as you will. I don't know why they said that the penis was swallowed by a perch, and then apparently that was the story of why Egyptians didn't eat
She was like,
perches.
no.
Drop it.
Yeah, I need that.
And curiously, the Canaanite god Baal fights Mot, the god of death, and is buried in a tomb by his sister for 3 days and then returns. So this whole concept of being a god dying, buried, and then come back is not new.
No.
There's also a lot of questions as to whether Jesus was God or the Son of God, etc. But that was all debated in the council.
I mean, there are even some scholars who suggest it was John who was killed, who was the real sort of head of the cult or whatever, and Jesus sort of took over, and it kind of it's an interesting, it's a whole thing if you want to look at the historiography of it. But
as well, Paul came many years after Jesus died, but Paul there were different versions of Christianity that were going around, and the version that Paul put forth is just the one that won out.
But also at this sort of juncture, people often bring up very simple one-to-one relationships between existing iconography and ideas and the gospel story or stories. And in that sense, I don't think people are as clever as they think they are when they say, look at this sculpture of Isis and Osiris. Isn't that Jesus and Mary? I mean, a female figure holding a baby is quite universal.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it's not as simple as some people in the Middle East imported Egyptian iconography and went, aha, we have something new. It's just different. I suppose it's the difference between having a cultural background and things that resonate, I guess, and having a literal intent to import things. And I don't think that would have worked. I don't think.
I don't want to say we're gonna, because I'm gonna give it away, but we're gonna get into that later.
Okay.
And talking about iconography and what is original versus what is projected. Yeah. So we'll see. So this one you'll get, Mark, because we already talked about it. Was the Last Supper a Passover Seder?
No.
we don't know. We don't know.
Oh, come on. You said no.
I said we don't know. We don't know.
Oh, okay.
According to Dr. Helen Bond, leading biblical scholar in the life of Christ, the passage in Mark that states that the Last Supper was Passover feast is redactional. Her proposal is that, in historical fact, the Last Supper was not a Passover meal. It was simply a meal that Jesus shared with his disciples sometime before Passover, possibly the Thursday evening or the week before Passover, in any year between 27 and 34 CE. We don't know. So this allows for the connection of Passover events, and obviously Jesus went to Jerusalem for Passover, but we don't know that happened on the day. We have no idea. The connection of the Last Supper and Jesus's death, more specifically with Passover celebrations, was a result of later remembering and theological reflection, which took two directions. In one of the two directions, that of John and Paul, Jesus was equated with the Paschal Lamb.
Okay.
and was crucified the day before Passover. This is the beginning of that iconography of him being the sacrificial lamb.
Hmm.
The other, seen especially in Mark, is that the Last Supper is connected with the Passover celebration itself, so that Jesus is remembered, as you said, Mark, as you doth say in the in the writing and otherwise. Jesus is
Hmm.
remembered as having been crucified on the very day of Passover. Again, so it's to shift his death, so this way everything kind of links up.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Here's the other big one, Mark. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Hmm.
Is Easter originally a pagan holiday?
Which part of the world are you talking about?
Oh, very good question. Why do you
uh,
say that, Mark?
because it's gonna be a bit like Saturnalia, isn't it, in Christmas? I'm sure there are places where you can find celebrations of the return of the sun, um, and the coming of spring that line up quite nicely with Easter. But I'm going to say Easter itself is not.
Correct.
Exactly. Hey, cool. Woo!
Also, it needn't be because it's already based on Passover. That's the whole
Yeah.
point, is that it's based on Passover. And
Mm,
that was the whole Council of Nicaea, where them going, well, we don't want to have it. It's our celebration now. So we don't want to have it the same time as Passover. So they
mm.
switched their day so it wouldn't align with Passover.
At
Um,
this point, can I ask you about a certain baked good?
which one?
The the hot cross bun.
We're going to get to that later, Mark.
Okay.
Unless you want to get to it now.
No,
Why,
no,
why
no,
are
no,
you
no, no, no,
asking?
no. Go ahead. No,
Why are you asking, Mark?
just because they're nice. No reason. No reason. I don't know. Foreshadowing.
Yes, for
Yeah.
foreshadowing
Uh-huh.
the eventual.
You've got
As
to
for
do the ears for that one.
here, I'll give you a
Yeah.
pump.
Ah, yeah.
Uh, as as for pagan festival, so you are right in that obviously everybody has a spring
Mm,
festival, everybody. But there is no, as far as we know, there is absolutely no Germanic holiday that happened around the equinoxes, none.
mm,
For pagan festivals in Europe at this time, there is no record of Gaulish or Germanic festivals recorded. It may be that there just was none, or that the ancient
mm,
inhabitants, being wholly taken up with plowing or sowing, just didn't have a festival at this time. Alternatively, some of the later Easter rites and customs, eco practices, which attended old feasts, which we've now lost sight of.
mm,
Um, one of
mm.
those can possibly point to this, but no, in terms of any feast that didn't happen on the full moon after the spring equinox, there's just no way that would have happened. The
Yeah.
pre-Celtic inhabitants of the British Isles likely observed the spring equinox, as some of the surviving megaliths are
Mhm.
oriented on a solar basis, but there is no evidence that the spring equinox received any special attention by pre-Christian Celts at all.
No, but there's a really good reason for that, and that's because there's no food around.
That's right. Exactly
So
so.
in that sense, you can't have a feast at this time of year. And what one of the things we know about even later medieval full-on agrarian communities where they had the capacity to produce excess food and store it for great lengths of time. And that's not to say that Iron Age and pre-Iron Age people didn't have storage capacities. Um, is that even they would be running out at this point, even under a
That's
feudal
right.
system where it's top down planned and you can sort of say, okay, right, we know we're going into the winter, we need to have food to get us through. Often this time of year was known for people, being very hungry, and if not downright, I mean, there are rumors that you'd get to this point and you'd start eating hallucinogenics because you're so hungry. So it was known as the maddening, and apparently people would just be going around high off their faces on mushrooms.
Ergot poisoning, what a trip.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're down to the stuff at the bottom of the barrel. So it's yeah, if nothing else, the idea of feasting, especially in Northern Europe at this time of year, is unlikely. Yeah.
As an aside, there is a Slavic goddess named Morena, or Marzana, as she's known in Poland. And she's associated, she was burned or drowned at this time of the year, and she still is in
Hmm.
certain Slavic countries. to
She
mark
still
the
is burned and
she
drowned. Goodness
still
me.
is. She still is.
She's
Because
still being
in Italy, La Befana is burned, but at Christmas, rather, I should say,
right.
in January, right? So she's
Yeah.
burned at the end of Christmas. The same thing with Bridget's Day. Bridget's Day is February 1st, though, and that's the official
Mm,
Celtic, well, I should say now Irish,
mm,
first day of spring,
yeah.
where so not anywhere near Easter, right?
No. No.
Morena is burned now, but
Mm,
she's burned the fourth Sunday of Lent, right? So it could be,
okay.
we don't know if that custom was moved, if this is
Mm,
where it always was. We have no
mm,
idea. Just as a footnote, there are people who claim that this whole Easter and the story of Jesus was a copy of the cult of Mithras, but this
mm,
is not true. There was a book that was published by two people who were not historians or archaeologists, so I won't mention the title,
yeah.
falsely claiming that Mithras was born on December 25th and that
Yeah.
Mithras died on Easter.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's possible. The Persian Mithras is a Zoroastrian goddess associated with Yalda, and Yalda again is in December. Has
Mm.
nothing to do with spring or Eastertide at all.
No, although again, working in this part of the world, on Hadrian's Wall in that sense, where there are some very good examples of Mithraic temples
Mhm.
along the old military way. Um, you do get, I've received, and I know people at Newcastle University, for example, receive emails quite often from people who are like, can you tell me how similar the Mithraic cult was to a church? Can you tell? And you sort of you can see three steps ahead of, because they want you to confirm something so that they can go but I almost always reply saying, I know where you're coming from, and unfortunately, no, it doesn't line up in the way that you want it to. But then again, there also were a lot of Eastern mystery cults
Yeah.
at that time, and the idea of a bit of membership giving you knowledge or giving you access to something in a way that, oddly enough, I don't know if no, hopefully you'll agree. Oddly enough, one of the best representations of this I've ever seen is the Life of Brian, Uncle Toby's Life of
Yeah.
Brian,
Yeah.
because in
I'm
that you've
not
got
the Messiah.
well, there's Brian, but also most of the point in there in the forum area, in the marketplace, you have people on pedestals who are all preaching doom and gloom, and they have their own versions, their own take on,
Mhm.
we're under oppression, the end times have come, follow me. Um, and I don't think they put it in. I don't think they put it in there to undermine much, but certainly it gave a good sense of, yeah, you could pick your poison, and in that sense, it doesn't mean that any of those mystery cults or even the Mithraean cult has a direct is a direct precedent to what became Christianity. Hmm.
Right, exactly. And as well,
Hmm.
I mean, the cult of Mithras is very popular amongst
Hmm.
Roman soldiers, right?
Yeah.
And so how they venerated could have been different in every place. I mean, yes, we do
Hmm.
have, like you say, we do have evidence of Mithras's cult. We do have evidence of temples, but
Hmm.
there was also a cult of Isis as well that went
Yeah.
around Roman. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
just to say that they equate them falsely is not, it's not a good idea, and it just doesn't work.
No, 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 and I suppose one more thing I would say on that is that I do like the fact that people want to do research on this stuff and want to, but the problem is this is where a lack of knowledge can be a dangerous thing, because a lack of the full context of that can lead you down the path of presuming that the answer is, aha, this is where, and I understand where that takes off and it becomes
Hmm.
something that we live with today. So it's well, I suppose what I would say is keep on researching, and you'll get more of a context of that, I think.
But real researching, as in asking historians and archaeologists, not, I've done
Yeah.
my research.
She says with an interesting rabbit hat on.
I know,
Like,
luckily,
I've done my research.
I hope more people have are listening to this
Take me
than
seriously.
looking at it. Yes, take me seriously
Yeah.
as I pump the ears full of air.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh, I love it.
here's the question you wanted, Mark. Speaking of expansion,
Yeah.
was Easter named after the holiday Ostara?
I do not think so.
Correct.
Hooray!
Correct. Actually, Ostara
Hooray!
is a completely modern invention, very modern, actually.
Yeah.
The creation of Ostara came in 1968. It was invented
Hmm.
by a man named Aidan Kelly. Was writing the liturgy for the new Reformed Orthodox Order of the Golden Dawn, which is also
Hmm.
associated with Wicca. Professor Ronald Hutton says in his essay on modern pagan festivals, which you can read online, the Ostara has no recorded festival associations in Northern Europe before the arrival of Christian Easter. There were no greater feasts in the equinoxes, however, than in the remaining surrounding months. And the opening of the official year was not itself a great religious festival. It's necessary to go as far as ancient Greece to find any festivals at the equinox at all.
Mm.
Kelly dealt with the spring equinox by applying the name Ostara, which is simply the most euphonious of the early Germanic equivalents for Easter. That's it.
Okay.
It was, moreover, one highlighted by the greatest of all pioneers of study of German folklore, Jacob Grimm, who had suggested that it had originally been the name of the pagan goddess. So we get that riff off bead from the
Yeah.
Brothers Grimm.
Mm.
That's where we get it. But Kelly composed Ostara Rites with associated with renewal and rebirth, and it was entirely made up by him and is not an ancient festival at all.
Hmm.
Is Easter named for Ishtar?
No, I have heard this though, but I don't think it
No,
is.
it's not. Internet, stop it. Every outlet on the internet,
Uh-huh.
even freaking Time magazine, claims
Yep.
that it's an ancient Babylonian festival. They have their own festival. They have their
Mm.
own festival called Akitu that is completely different. And it is probably related to the holiday of Purim, which we can talk about later. But it's the escape of the god Marduk and his subsequent marriage to the earth goddess Ishtar has nothing to do with Easter. And every time I see this, and I always
You
see
know,
like,
I didn't think this would be the case, but this seems to be the holiday that's bringing out the most for both of us, the most kind of like just tell me.
I think because Christmas. So I think it's because Easter used to be the most important Christian holiday. It's not any
Mm,
longer, right?
no,
Easter used to be the big one, and now Christmas, especially since Victorian times, has completely just railroaded everything.
yeah,
And again, I love Christmas. I think
yeah,
Christmas is my favorite time of the year, along with Halloween. But we really have to stop saying that a
mm,
certain thing is Christian, a certain thing is pagan, and then the internet just takes it and runs away with it. And then every single outlet from here to Timbuktu takes up that same line of thinking, and you just go, where is the evidence? Like, where's the
yeah.
historicity? Just
Well,
show
and
me the evidence.
ironically, in Timbuktu, they probably have some really good written sources at their university. So,
That's true,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
because is it in Timbuktu? Isn't the university the medieval studies university there, I think? Oh,
yeah.
that's
No,
Kalamazoo. That's Kalamazoo, sorry.
that's coming to say no, but Timbuktu just has a tremendous ancient library. I mean,
Fantastic.
it's wonderful. That's a whole other story, though. I won't take us down that road. So what do you want to hit me with the next one?
Is Easter
Yeah.
an ancient Roman holiday?
No.
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 It does have similar themes, but
Yeah.
some people have claimed that Floralia, the festival to honor the goddess Florida, which Florida, Flora.
Florida.
Fantastic. I wish that were so. The
Yeah,
goddess
they said they
Flora.
celebrated alligators and shotguns. Yeah.
No, that's Mardi Gras.
Uh,
The Floralia was held on the 27th of April during the Republican era, or the 28th on Julian calendar. Festival included the Ludi Flore, the Games of Flora, which lasted for 6 days under the Empire. The holiday was all about flowers, fertility, verdure. Interestingly, Ovid states that there were hares and goats that were part of these festivals, but because these animals were considered to be symbols of fertility,
hmm.
and were commonly released as part of the festivities. So no sacrifice or worship of lambs or hares.
No, no.
Perseus says that the crowd was pelted with vetches, beans, and bluebonnets as symbols of fertility. Multicolored clothing was customary, and there may or may not have been nocturnal observances, since sources mention measures taken to light the way after the theatrical performances.
Okay. Okay. Also, legumes and beans. Yeah, that have always been a very
Hmm.
strong sort of sense, strong
Hmm.
representative
Broad beans
fertility.
used to be a big thing in
Yeah.
England, and they're not anymore. But all the way
Mm.
through, there used to be as well. There was a bean festival that
Hmm.
did happen in England. I don't think it does anymore.
Mm.
Where they would make beans in a buttered pan, and everybody would eat that together. It seemed to
Right.
be a kind of like a poor festivals,
Yeah.
a way to give people something to be excited about, because beans were usually the thing that grew first
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
plentifully, so
Mm.
people could eat that as
Mm.
their first sort of like spring feast, their first spring meal. But I don't think that's done anymore.
No.
But
No.
it was a holiday that was done, holiday festival that was done during let's celebrate the bean holiday. It was a festival that was associated with Lent, but I don't think it's done anymore in England.
Okay, as in a slight aside, to the resident uh, Franklinator, what is, and then I say, do you think, therefore, that the tendency in North American English to say vacation or something like that as opposed to holiday
Mm.
is because holiday is taken very literally linguistically as a holy day? Whereas perhaps in British English, whenever, as a child, I just grew up saying holiday meaning the school holiday, for example.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
get in the summer, that kind of thing. Do you think there's something there or not?
I don't think it has to do with I can look this up for you, but I'm just going to
Mm,
tell you off the top of my head. I don't think it has anything to do with Holy Day, because that association, I think, kind of weaned after the Reformation, right? And so obviously
yeah,
with things like schools, they would just say, oh, the school holiday or the spring holiday, meaning the time that you have off your work or the time that you have
right,
off this. Whereas so in American English, I assume that we take the French, and because vacances is vacation,
right. I
and
see.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they use vacances as a, like, again, vacancy, right? Vacances, vacancy,
yep,
as the word to say I am taking off this certain time from work. I will be vacant from work. I will be vacant from school. That kind of thing.
right. Mm, mm,
Whereas holy day is a completely different thing
yeah,
in French.
and and I suppose a literal religious connection would actually be more accurately feast days, wouldn't it, as
Yeah,
opposed to
so we would say
holy days?
festival, I guess. But I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
we don't really say
mm,
festival or feast days. 'Cause, I mean, most
no,
people here are pretty a-religious these days.
yeah, mm,
So even Catholic, they would say holy day, not holiday.
yeah, yeah.
And that's it. We talked
Mm,
about this, actually. We talked about Good Friday yesterday,
mhm.
and how we don't actually know where that word came from. Good
No.
meaning, people assume meaning holy,
Mhm.
but it's possible that it came from God's Day, God's Friday, God's Day, because
Oh, okay.
that's what it was in Anglo-Saxon. So we're not really
But
sure.
also, also this again, when it comes to sort of folk derivation and traditions, as a kid, I asked people around me, back home, growing up in Wales,
They don't know anything.
where you ask Welsh people, um, where does Good Friday come from? And the closest people could say was, well, because it was good when Jesus sacrificed
No.
himself for the world. Exactly. But I think what it reveals, and probably this also possibly feeds back into some, not all, some of the stuff that comes out of um, attempts to reconstruct versions of, to have neo-paganism, is people don't like to not know something, do they? They don't like to have a
Yes.
question mark.
We
Mm,
talked about that when Professor Ronald Hutton was here. I asked him, why is it? What is it? Why is it that people just make up stuff
yeah,
rather than, and he said, because people just can't bear not knowing. And
yeah.
I personally, as somebody who has always had a vested interest in history and etymology, and all, I love not knowing. I think
Mm,
so. For example, like the word Yule, we
yeah.
have to this day zero idea what that word
Mm,
means.
mm,
None. I mean, we could say it's possibly related to the word whale from Gothic,
mm.
which means health, or wheel rather, and possibly to Yold, which possibly means health in
Hmm.
Anglo-Saxon, but we have no clue, no idea.
Okay.
We
I'll log that for future.
Yeah, absolutely. So people say, so same thing with Good Friday. Why is it called Good Friday? We actually, oh God, no.
You'll log.
Oh no. Oh
I'm
no.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, I couldn't. I'm so sorry. I genuinely seemed to just suddenly hurt you.
That's because it took me so long to realize where you were going with that one.
Oh. Okay. Oh dear. Um,
The classic. All right. I don't think you could top that one for this time.
no.
That's great. All right, Mark, the big one. You ready?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll wait till you're finished. There you
Hmm.
go. Is the Easter Bunny a pagan symbol?
Now I'm going to connect it to what you were just talking about in terms of the hair, and I'm going to suggest that it has been incorrectly brought into Easter, perhaps, and it has its roots in people in Romans writing about their own festivals.
Very good, Mark. So,
Hooray!
yay. Some internet nutters will claim that the bunnies, I've seen this everywhere. I've
Hmm.
seen this everywhere. I even saw this on like not the folklore podcast, but I saw it some folklore, very popular folklore site saying that the bunnies belong to Yostra or Istra.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is not even a shred of evidence for that from
No.
any, not even from any pagans, because like we just said,
Mm.
for at least for Northern Europe, there was no spring equinox festival at all. So no, there are
I've.
two stories
Oh yeah. Go.
that went around about Easter or Yostra and the hares,
Hmm.
two very famous ones. Those were made up by New Age circles in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Victorians had a story about the Easter bunny once being a bird, and that's how they connect the bunny to the bird. But it's all Victorian folklore, and
Oh, you mean in terms of eggs? Sorry.
the for that the bunny once like transformed into a bird.
And why does it need to be a bird?
Great question.
Is that so it can lay an egg?
I'm guessing that's why. That's how they
Okay.
get the egg from the bunny. It's the Virgin Mary who became associated with rabbits.
Right.
And the motif of the three hares, right? You know this, the Tinder's rabbits.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
became a popular motif on especially on churches associated with the Virgin
Mm.
Mary. Motif is used in a number of medieval European churches,
Hmm.
especially in France, like the Basilica of Notre Dame, and in Germany, and it occurs with the greatest frequency in churches in Devon,
Right.
uh,
Okay.
where it appears as a recollection of possible insular Celtic design. But again, it's just the design, not any meaning whatsoever. The designs originally came from the British, like the Latine culture,
Yeah.
and they were obviously put into the Triskel brooches, like the fibulae. But that's it. The Dictionary of English Folklore states there is no evidence that links Yostra and hares. And even if there were, these links would have been unlikely to have survived the subsequent centuries of invasion, Christianization, etc. There's
Mm.
no mention of bunnies at Easter at all
No.
until the medieval period, actually. The Easter Bunny, as we know it, is a German invention. And this motif, the motif of the three bunnies together possibly even started in China and came to us along the Silk Road. But the first mention of an Easter bunny is in
Hmm.
Germany in 1572. The Easter hare
Okay.
was said to bring baskets of eggs for children who were good. A century later, a German text once again mentioned the Easter bunny, describing an old fable, and suggested that the story has been around for a long time. And in 1835, in Deutsche Mythology, Jacob Grimm states that the Easter hare is unintelligible to me, but probably the hare was a sacred animal of Ostara. That's where we get all this problem from, is
Right.
one line that Jacob Grimm wrote in 1835. He supposed it must be, but
Mm.
there is no evidence for this at all. Um,
No, and this is where again it's really important to stress that he is historic for us. He's an historic source for us,
right.
but it can be quite difficult to remember that he's closer to us than he is to the things that he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens quite often. You know, we've talked I think in the past about how the Torn was used by Victorian scholars as a proto model for society in
Yeah.
pre-Roman Europe and this kind of thing. Um, but it's really important. It's just really important just to grasp that he essentially is in a very similar position to what we are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what we all are, searching for connections and meaning, and coming up with something interesting. One that I often used to hear a lot about when I worked at the Orvic Centre was people, for some reason, I don't know why, thinking that, well, in their heads, Freya was connected with Easter
Oh, I've
because of
heard this.
fertility,
Yes.
etc.,
Yes.
and that Freya had a sleigh pulled by hares.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Well, Freya has the sleigh pulled by cats, but a lot of groups will
yeah,
say, oh, the Anglo-Saxon version of that was Jostra, and she had a sleigh pulled by hares.
yeah,
I've heard that.
yeah,
It's not.
no,
There's no mythology linked to that. There's no
no,
writing linked to that. It was all made up
yeah.
in the
It was two
completely.
blue cats or a I think there was a golden wild boar as well that was linked with Freya, and that's about it. So, but you see, this is again, this is also one of the things that's really interesting. Is it is a melting pot of ideas that kind of do plug in together, don't they? That doesn't mean that
Mhm.
they're meant to plug in together, but they plug in quite nicely, quite often. Yeah.
And that's why people do associate with them. But
Mm,
but we have no, when it comes to Anglo-Saxon gods and goddesses, I think we've got maybe about five that we know about, and
mm,
Yostra is not one of them.
no,
That's it. So I
no,
think Hreda, I think, is probably the closest one. And again, we have
mm,
no evidence of worship rabbits, nothing
no.
at all. Bunnies or rabbits have been associated with Easter since the 18th century. A 1722 book by George Frank von Frankenau, sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly, sorry for my German, alludes to the Easter hare, but the Easter bunny only became a staple of the holiday in the 19th century, fueled by the rise of Victorian holiday cards, no less.
Hmm. Hmm.
The Easter hare doesn't appear recorded until, like, actually written about as an Easter hare until 1678, and was only found in southwest Germany in the 18th century. In Leicestershire, there was an annual hare hunt held
Okay.
every Easter Monday and was first recorded in 1668. In 1620, the calendar of papers recorded that huntsmen say that those who have not had a hare against Easter must eat a red herring. In Warwick,
Or a red herring.
holding it in. You can't outdo the last one. I don't
I
know.
can't. I can't.
That was so good from the highs to the lows. In Warwick, the parson supposedly offered a goat, a calf's head, uh, and 100 eggs to the man who presented him with a hare before 10 a.m. Easter Monday.
Interesting.
There might have been some kind of association with hares and witches, however, because of the Påskahäxan, that the Easter witches that go around in specifically Sweden, but Nordic countries. But that's it. That we have no other
Mm,
anything in terms, but not all religions in Europe associated Easter with a rabbit, though. In Germany, in certain parts of Germany, it was a fox. In
okay.
Switzerland, it was an Easter cuckoo, so it was a bird. Like I said, in northern countries, they have the Påskahäxan, the Easter witches.
Hmm.
In Finland and Sweden, children go around dressed as witches. Old men go door to door for treats, similar to trick or treating with eggs. Um, and this all used to be done on Maundy Thursday, and it really had nothing to do with Easter Sunday. So
No.
it all might
No.
have been associated with, like, again, going around alms for the poor, going around that kind of thing before the holiday started, so at least everybody would have something for the holiday.
Yeah.
But not everybody associates Easter with hares. That's really just us.
Okay. Okay. Well, also things like sheep as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, that kind of thing. That's definitely. Do is that going to be part of of today's quiz or not?
Well, the sheep we know comes from again, the whole Paschal is Passover. It's
Yeah.
a Passover
Cool.
thing. But even so, I mean, there are this time of the year, it's lambing season, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this so lambs get associated with everything.
The lambs, Clarice.
Hmm.
The lambs. Sorry, I have a friend who she grew up on a farm and she can't help but say that every time it's lambing season.
Of course, yeah,
The
absolutely.
lambs.
But lambs in general were associated with this time of the year, very early spring.
Hmm.
Even in February, it's already starting, the whole lamb associations. There's also the Feast of Saint Agnes, where they bring the lamb, decorated lamb, into the church. It's supposed to be like the first lamb that you get
Mm.
uh from the year.
Hmm.
You bring it into church. They don't eat it. They just bless it and let it go back to its mother.
Yeah.
It's too young to be eaten.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things with lambs this time of the year. And
Mm.
so, especially in Catholic tradition, maybe not so much in Protestant Anglican, it's still when they took the whole idea of Jesus celebrating Passover, he became the sacrificial lamb, and so the lamb
Mm.
is usually eaten on Passover. So they ended up bringing lambs in as a symbol of sacrifice to
Mm.
Easter. As well,
Mm.
lambs are, again, the whole sacrifice thing. Lambs are a big thing during Lent because not only is it lambing time, but again, people who observe Lent are not
Yeah.
eating meat, etc. Sacrifice. That whole concept of sacrifice. The
Again,
sacrifice. They
plugs in
eat.
nicely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they eat the sacrifice.
Um,
Here's your other big
yep.
one, Mark.
Okay.
Are eggs a pagan symbol? Easter eggs
Uh,
specifically.
uh, no.
Correct. So you're so
Thank you.
mealy mouthed over there. It's fine.
Well, no, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you for why. And that is because so growing up, you ask people, why on earth do we do this thing? And again, some of the best, some of the most frequent guesses people would have for Easter egg would be, it represents the boulder and the tomb or whatever.
that is a
Yeah,
common, yes, that's a common
yeah.
story. So I mean,
Um,
there are actually several other reasons for Easter eggs.
hmm
One is that it came from the Jewish tradition of Passover.
hmm
Nisan is one of the beginnings of the year, beginnings of the Jewish New Year. There are four. That's a whole other thing we can get into. But Nisan, which is when Passover is celebrated, is the beginning of the year. So eggs are usually eaten at the end of the year again to celebrate wholeness, health,
Yeah.
rebirth as well. It's unlikely though that the Christian tradition borrowed that. So,
Mm,
but I mean, there is
mm,
association, but it's unlikely. Um, there are some medieval traditions, though, that talk about eggs. There's one story that talks about Mary taking eggs to the tomb of Christ. And
hmm
then when she looked in the tomb and saw that it was empty, the eggs turned red. That's a very famous story. There's
Wow.
yeah, that's why the Eastern Orthodox Church, that's why they paint their eggs red.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
Also, like you say, like you hollow out the egg, and again, it represents the tomb of Christ. Really, it's just the hens start laying around this time of the year, and they
Yeah.
become associated with renewal, right? Because
Yeah.
if eggs are laying, that's it. Brothers Grimm in Deutsche mythology um, claimed that eggs were pagan, postulating that Anglo-Saxons used them as a symbol of renewal, and that's where we get this whole idea. But we have
No.
no evidence for this. Uh, and it really is, eggs were forbidden during Lent for a very long time. They're not anymore. And there was an abundance of them. So during Holy Week, when they weren't allowed to be eaten, they were boiled. And then once Lent was over, people painted and ate them. And
Yeah.
eggs were a way for poor people to break the Lenten fast because poor people couldn't afford meat back then.
Mm,
Professor Ronald Hutton writes, eggs were the things that even poor people could afford. So many poor people ate eggs instead of meat when Lent was over. But in the Lutheran Church, eggs were originally painted green and hung on trees. And then obviously red in the Eastern Orthodox to mirror the blood of Christ. Others claim the eggs became popular because they looked like pussy willows.
okay.
And those started flowering at this time of the
Yeah.
year. Again,
Yeah.
this whole idea of renewal. That's
hmm
it.
hmm
You know what pace egging is, right, Mark? Pace egging and other egg games.
No. No. No.
In
No. No.
in the
Hit me.
north of England, there's pace egging. Pace egging time, very famous song by Kate
Uh,
Resby. Pace egging and other egg games became popular in the Middle Ages as part of Easter mystery plays in England. In
ah.
in
Okay.
1290 in England, Edward
hmm
the First purchased 450 eggs to be decorated with colors and gold leaf and then distributed to his household. So eggs are
Right.
medieval.
So is that pace as in peace?
Oh, I think it comes from the Paschal or Pascal,
Right. I
Pascha.
see. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
pace
Right.
egging.
Interesting. Um, Something oddly enough, growing up in North Wales and then moving to the Northeast for university and now living here. Something which wasn't a thing where I'm originally from, but it's very much a thing here, even if you're not Catholic, is fish on a Friday, on Good
Hmm.
Friday. So all the fish and chip shops, and funnily enough, we often find ourselves in the mood for a fish and chips on Good Friday, but then we always have to go, no, no,
Well, it's
no,
also why
they
not? I
won't be
mean, it's
able.
good. It's good weather. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah,
It's the first
yeah,
starting to be warm weather.
yeah,
Everybody's off, right? Because it's bank. Oh,
yeah,
low said the Lord of bank holidays. You have a bank
yeah.
holiday, so of course you're going to go for a
John
fish and
Lubbock,
chip.
yeah, banker and archaeologist. Well, actually, so yeah. So in that sense, there's an award-winning fish and chip shop in South Shields. They had a queue
Mm,
around the block all day on Friday, and you cannot get a takeaway for love nor money. So it's a thing. Yeah, yeah. But also not. What I find interesting about that is it again, it's sort of inherited almost like a festival meal
hmm.
from a practice which hasn't been consistent either, actually, in the Catholic
No.
Church. It only came back again a few years ago, didn't it? I think. It was a practice, then it went away, then it came back.
Well,
But
so actually,
yeah.
let's ask this question now, Mark, because I was going to
Uh-huh.
ask a different one. What can be eaten on Lent?
I would. Well, I don't. I know. Do you mean? I know good stories about stuff being recategorized to fit in with stuff
Like,
to do with
like,
fish, for example, and uh, uh, otters.
yes. What
Like,
else? Uh-huh.
dolphin. I
Mm-hmm.
seem to recall. Eventually, uh, was it rabbits? Were they recategorized as well?
No.
No.
So
Oh, okay.
beavers were recategorized as
Beavers.
fish at
Yeah,
one
yeah.
point, according to a 1760 publication called The Natural and Civil History of French Dominions in North and South America. Here we are, way.
Uh,
Uh, with respect to beavers, they say he is the perfect fish and has been judicially declared by the College of Physicians at Paris.
uh,
And the faculty of divine have, in consequence of this declaration, pronounced it lawful to be eaten on days of fasting.
yeah, yeah.
Between the
Um,
16th and 18th centuries, clergymen of Venezuela also wrote to the Vatican asking if it was okay to eat capybaras.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because yeah, I can see that. They're sort of they're like sitting around in water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything essentially that swam in water was
Yeah.
constituted as a fish.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, rumors have it that the ecclesiastical communities just got fed up of eating fish on holy days and they wanted a bit of variety. Um, and who can blame them, I suppose. But
Makes sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I suppose I wonder if something like a puffin would qualify. If you can get your hand on a puffin.
Oh, waterbird. Yeah, probably,
Yeah.
maybe.
A seagull. Yeah.
I don't want to eat them. They're full of malice.
Mm.
Going back to Easter eggs.
And
When was the
pigeons.
first Easter egg hunt?
First Easter egg hunt. 1923.
Oh, no.
Okay.
It was actually it might have been Martin Luther. He might not have
Right.
invented it, but he certainly did popularize it. The first records are in 16th century, and Martin Luther
Okay.
got his entire congregation to do the hunt. Men hid the eggs, and women and children found them. And the Hanoverians brought the egg hunt to England, and Queen
Easter egg
Victoria
hunt.
had Queen Victoria had Easter egg hunts in Kensington Gardens.
Right.
As
Okay.
well, Easter egg hunts traditionally happened on Monday, Thursday, and not Easter Sunday.
Okay. Okay. Although I wouldn't have guessed Luther.
Yeah.
I would have presumed it would be no, 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 no.
No.
Not in the Bible. Can't do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you know what's interesting?
Interesting.
Well, you know what's interesting about Martin Luther is, I mean, he also invented quite a lot. Well, Lutherans in general invented things like Christmas trees. So
Mm,
it was interesting to see how, even though it wasn't in the Bible, they just again, it's a folk custom that they made up their own
mm,
customs, and
mm.
they just grew out of there.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
When were chocolate eggs invented?
Uh, Recently there was a news story about a chocolate egg that was 102 years old
Okay.
surviving, and it went on
Whose make was it?
I want to say Cadbury's, but I don't know. No.
It might
Okay.
theirs might have been. The first Easter eggs weren't invented until the early 19th century in France and Germany. In the
Okay.
UK, it was Fry's that made the first chocolate egg
Yeah,
in
I can believe that. Yeah.
1873.
Okay.
Cadbury's was 1875 when they made when they invented the special molding chocolate
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would mold together so you could put something inside. In the
Yeah.
1850s, it was artificial eggs, where it's made of
Hmm.
papier-mâché and card, and you could put something. It's like the pre Kinder egg.
Yeah, yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And arguably safe. Well, safer apparently if you're the FDA. Goodness sake.
We're in Canada, so Kinder eggs are fine here.
Oh no, no, yeah, I know, but it's like I don't understand that at all. Like, do they
You know
really
what
think
though? I
people are
mean,
going to choke to death on
the
Easter eggs?
toys are okay. It's just that the chocolate's not good
No, no, it's not. It's not exactly. But yeah,
because it is that molding chocolate and it has to stay solid in all temperatures.
yeah,
And it's not chocolate. It's cocoa butter. That's all it is, and it's
yeah,
not very good.
yeah.
How long was Easter originally?
How?
How long is it today? Think of how long is it today?
Well, I'm going to say a day.
Oh, very good, Mark.
Okay,
Very good.
like but like I wasn't sure if you were trying if it also should include the Lent season as well, or
So that well that's I mean that's part of Shrovetide, right? But then there's also Eastertide, and so Eastertide
right.
begins with Easter, and it goes on. There's a Hawktide as well,
Okay.
which I don't think anybody keeps anymore. But originally, now many people would say Easter's 4 days because or they would say because or some people even say two
Right.
weeks because it's Holy Week, right?
Yeah.
Holy Week beforehand,
Hmm.
and then obviously it doesn't let go until
And
the
then you
following
fill the
Monday.
holes with chocolate. Sorry.
That's where you fill the emptiness in your heart. All the
Yeah.
chocolate goes in there. But Easter was originally only one day. It was by
Right.
late fourth century, the churches in Palestine were keeping the preceding Sunday in memory of Christ's entry into Jerusalem with
Okay.
the bearing of palm branches, so it's hence Palm Sunday,
Yeah.
to imitate the actions of the crowds in that occasion. By ninth century, Palm Sunday was also a common festival in Europe. So it was originally only one day, and then again it became Holy Week, and then it became 4 days. And now I don't know that nobody's off for Holy Week. Right.
No.
So everybody's
No.
just off for Good Friday all the way until, and it's strange because we had this conversation here yesterday. We're like, why is it that everything's closed on Good Friday? Open Holy Saturday, close Easter Sunday. They
Yeah.
just close it for 4 days. Doesn't make any sense
Um.
whatsoever.
On excuse me. On the note of the full week. I have there was a story that someone once told me when they were a kid. So we're talking about a guy who's probably in his 80s or 90s now,
Hmm.
growing up, um, and hearing the story of uh, Jesus and the apostle posse coming to Jerusalem,
Hmm.
and going and getting a donkey and then riding into Jerusalem. And then the King James Bible, I think, says he arrived in triumph. And he said, as a child, he imagined that this was Jesus arriving in a triumph in a car. And sort of rocking up. And he was like, of course they were all waving the palms and putting them on the floor. They'd never seen a car before.
Amazing. You know what? Someone please draw that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
brilliant.
I loved it. And it was it's just so pure. And he clearly still held on to that idea. This sort
That's amazing.
of like,
That's well, I mean, according to some gospels, he just came in completely unceremoniously.
mm,
And that was it. And
mm,
as they said, there was one there. Some gospels say that his ministry was only 1 year, so
mm,
he was riding down just
yeah,
regular on a donkey because his feet were tired. And they say that he didn't
mm,
have disciples and he just rode in, and the Romans
mm,
were aware of him, and then that's about it. And they came to get him.
right.
So,
Okay.
that's
Mm,
about all. By 385, it was a custom at Jerusalem to keep the preceding day in memory of the Last Supper. So on Monday, Thursday.
okay.
Um, and this had likewise reached Britain by the 8th century. During the High Middle Ages, it acquired the popular nickname of, as we said, Maundy Thursday. We actually don't know why. The one postulation is that it had to do with the maunds or the baskets for begging.
Okay.
Another one is that maund as in mandate, that Jesus gave the commandment on that day. We're not sure. People keep both. It's really not a big deal. The law code of Alfred the Great in 877 directed all masters to free their servants from labor during the whole 7 days before and after Easter, being at the time, it was the longest holiday of the year. As I said, Christmas was a very minor feast at this time. At
Okay.
its center lay the most important religious celebration, firmly established by Alfred's time as the principal one for baptism and for taking communion all over the British Isles. So Easter was always the biggest one.
Oh,
And
so would this be adult baptism, or would people actually hold on to their young uns and get them baptized at a particular time of year, do you
I
think?
mean, you could dunk your kid in the river, if you really
Yeah.
wanted to. So a good old ablution, just, you were bad. God says you're bad. Shh, shh. But no, I don't know. I'm assuming it says for all baptisms, so I'm assuming
Okay.
for everybody. But that would be something to look into.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was originally only one day, then it extended to 4 days, then 2 weeks, a full 2 weeks of Easter tide, right? Because you had, like I said, Holy Week and then the subsequent four
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
Now it's just two bank holidays, whereas Christmas is the one that gets all the precedence.
Mm. And the presents.
Well, that people I've seen now, people are saying that, like the Easter Bunny came because, especially in
Yeah.
we also might get a lot of the Easter traditions from the Pennsylvania Dutch, because obviously they're responsible for quite a few things. And they had, since they came from Germany, they did have the custom of the Easter Bunny bringing a basket of eggs
Yeah.
to kids. And again, it might have just been a way for children to learn about the holiday, a very innocuous way to learn about the holiday.
Mm.
So I've seen people doing things like that where we're going to talk about clothing in a second. Kids used to get new clothes for Easter.
Okay.
So it was never presents, but it was new clothes, right? Because you
Mm.
spring holidays, you get new clothes, is good luck for the year kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas now I think some people do get presents, or they at least certainly they get chocolate eggs, that's for sure.
Mm.
Um, I just buy my own because no one's getting me anything. And of course, you have to buy yourself the cool hats because you never get those from your
I
parents.
really want one of those now. I'm gonna have to go and find one.
I could
Um,
I'll send you one from
just
Amazon.
go around just
Yeah,
tapping things with it. Yeah. Anyway, so go
absolutely.
on.
You could even hold it up like this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Um,
If you need a taxi, allow me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because
so
that's
Mark,
like
here's
stop.
here's your question. Here's your big
Yep.
one. Are hot cross buns pagan?
No.
No, they're
No.
not.
They know they're not. No,
They
exactly.
never were a magazine. This question last year began my
Do you know, I'm
correspondence.
I'm gonna give you a point for this as well because you're so passionate.
This began my correspondence with Professor Ronald Hutton because
Uh-huh.
I saw this in Time magazine and I went, who the heck wrote this? Come on. And then I saw everywhere from here to
Yeah.
Australia, it was awash with the magazines. It was even on the English Heritage site. And I went, oh
Hmm.
no. I have to ask, and I know that he is a part of English Heritage. So I
Nice.
so I cut out the piece and I sent it to him and I said, please tell me the historicity of this, because I know that it's not. So
Mm.
where are they getting this information from? And you are the only person I know who knows the answer. And so he
Hmm.
wrote back to me saying it's all bogus. It's
Yeah.
all bogus. A
Yeah.
magazine, and I traced it. I told him I did my research, but I traced it to a magazine in the 1990s. It was a New Age home and garden magazine claiming that hot cross buns were made by Anglo-Saxons. I don't know. We Mark, you can attest this in archaeology. We literally
Hmm.
have bread from the Romans.
Yeah.
We have bread remains from the full loaves
Yeah.
remains from the Romans.
Yeah.
There is not a shred from
No.
Anglo-Saxons.
No. And that's basically because of the climate.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's not yet, but also, so out of interest, what did they claim was the reason for having a cross on a pagan bun?
If I remember correctly, the source that I saw claimed that the cross had to do with the wheel of the year, which was a concept
Oh, I see.
that
Right.
was
Okay.
not really thought
No.
of until until at least the 1930s.
It
So
is
I don't
quite
know.
weak. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know where they got this from.
No.
But yeah, hot cross buns, obviously they're supposed to be the crucifix. Churches began giving the buns out with crosses on them. Baking upon Good Friday was regarded unlucky, so they made them beforehand.
Mm.
The medieval veneration of consecrated bread and the mass should have left a profound impact upon the popular imagination, is not surprising. So we have the very first recipe that we have is in 12th century, but made by a monk, but very possibly it was popularized in St. Albans because there's also the Albans bun. And
Okay.
they were given out, they were baked before, but they were given out on Good Friday in 14th century.
Okay.
And obviously they became so popular. The homemade bread stamped with the cross were made by suddenly everybody.
Hmm.
And by 19th century, hot cross buns were known to very widely all over, especially Eastern Europe. The first um, writing that we have of saying the word hot cross bun is in
Hmm.
1761. And but people started calling out the one a penny, two a penny hot cross buns.
Yeah.
1733 is the first time that that song, that song is recorded.
Okay. Okay. It's interesting how, because today, I'm presuming it's similar where you are. Today, uh, you get almost like a race between the different outlets,
Uh-huh.
supermarkets, as to which is going to be the best hot cross bun of the year,
Uh-huh.
and so you get sort of chocolatey ones, you get ones with particularly orange zest in, or
Well, we have here
glazings
we
and.
have a couple of different ones. So there's Greek Easter bread, which
Hmm.
obviously is not a hot cross bun, but it has the egg, the full egg in
Yeah,
the middle.
yeah.
Um, we
And is
also
that an enriched dough? Is that or
yes,
not?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
tastes like a panettone.
Yeah.
It has a sweet but leavened.
Yeah.
And but our hot cross buns are not the icing ones. I know those are popular in the States. We
Hmm.
actually have the regular bun with the pastry crust
Yeah. Yeah.
that's done across. And I've
Interesting.
never seen ones that are embellished here, at least. We don't have the icing, we don't have the chocolate in them. We're very plain Jane.
Oh, okay. So you don't, because so what I'm talking about is ones that look
Mhm,
traditional. So
mhm.
yeah, icing on them is not a thing that happens here. But the ones that have maybe chocolate and ginger or something like put
Mm.
into it, into the mix almost, and then they can take on a slight brownish hue if they are chocolatey, if a chocolatey dough.
Ooh.
But that's the race. That's what happens. So, for example, we were just at a place called Marks and Spencers, which is
Yeah, I know M&S, yeah.
a nicer shop, and yeah, and they had some fancy pants hot cross buns
What
there.
you mean? You're not going to go get yours at Aldi?
Hey, I love Aldi. Aldi's just over there. I can see Aldi from my office
What about
window.
Little? You're not going to get any from Little?
We also go to Lidl, the middle at Lidl. It's well worth a look. But no, we just happened to have been in M&S and they had fancy pants. So, but also actually, often Aldi have the best. They have certainly often have the best mince pies as well. So yeah, it's a seasonal thing.
We unfortunately, so our local bakery, which is wonderful, they do the plain Janes, which
Uh-huh.
are just the two rows of four with the
Yeah.
Patriot crust, and we just have dried fruits
And
inside that.
currants. Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah,
have, we have
yeah,
we have the currants. That's it.
yeah. And then a nice
Whereas
glaze.
the
Yep.
Italian bakery don't make them at all. Instead, they do other breads for Easter.
Right.
And we have the Polish bakery. This is the best one though. Polish bakery doesn't do hot cross buns. What they do is they actually make a bread in the shape of a lamb.
Wow.
It's
Okay. Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
It's
Wow.
amazing. So they have a mold and they
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they do it and it's just it's a very sweet and there's nothing
Is it
inside.
sitting up? Is like, is it, or
Yeah,
is it lying down, or?
it's kind of doing a very sexy paint me like your French girls pose
Oh,
where
okay.
it has the feet in front and then the two hind legs wrapped up in the back and it's just
Oh, I
looking
see.
very like the very
Yeah,
eat me,
yes, yes.
very
Eat
saucy.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But there I got one once thinking that maybe there was something inside, kind of like the
Uh-huh.
Greek bread, where I was thinking maybe there's an egg inside. No.
No.
It's just a plain loaf, but just in a very picturesque version.
Yeah.
And then of course
Although
you
I
always
do love the idea of you just there's a moment where you're looking at it on your kitchen counter, and then tear it open. Like,
Well, so it's always, you always feel a bit bad because you go, do I cut the head off? What do I eat out of this?
yeah,
How do I do this?
yeah,
But yeah, there is but every culture has their own bread tradition.
yeah,
But hot cross buns are very Protestant, even though
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
So but
Oh,
that's why we have
that's
them.
also why, but that wouldn't be in the old in yep, yep. Pre Henry VIII, they wouldn't happen. Yeah, in that way. Anyway, come on.
Are Easter bonnets a religious tradition?
I'm gonna say no.
Correct. Broader English tradition of new clothes at Easter
Yes.
is recorded as late as 16th century.
Yeah.
Even Shakespeare mentions it in Romeo and Juliet, but it
Mhm.
wasn't until the 19th century that the Easter bonnet gained popularity, especially in the Americas, because of the Easter parades. Women and children participated in the Easter parades in New York City, and to be seen in their finest clothes and most intricate bonnets, often
Nice.
wreathed in flowers on their heads, because Easter coincides obviously with spring, lilies,
Yep.
daffodils, azaleas, hyacinths, and they would put those in their hats. Even though Easter
Mm.
bonnet may not be as popular as once was, I think it's fallen out of favor now. Many people still embrace the tradition in areas of the United Kingdom, for example. Children and
Yeah.
women design elaborate and ostentatious hats.
Yeah.
That's it.
Again, I mean, it may just be because this is the only part of England I've ever lived in, but certainly here I've noticed Easter bonnets are a thing. Also, uh, schools as well. They sort of almost have it as a, I guess they'll latch onto anything up for a Friday when they just want to go home as a crafting opportunity. But I know people who so my goddaughters, they have had requests to come in with the makings of an Easter bonnet and this kind of thing, which I think is quite nice actually. There's even Easter bonnet kits
Mhm.
as well in stores. You know, you can say you can get a, even if if you can't find a hat, there's a hat and you can make one. So personally, I would go for the full, because my I know you said her name then. One of my goddaughters, she made a full Easter bonnet into a tomb, and then she cut a hole in the front of the tomb, and out of the hole she put a little uh, what's the word when you pin together wool? You sort of stab the wool together into a
Oh,
that
I know
crafting
yes, I know you're talking about.
that
It's
she
not
did that.
worsted. It's something else.
No, no, but she made this pin together wool ball basically into a head.
Felting, I suppose.
Something
Is
like
it
that, yeah.
felting?
Into like a Jesus type figure poking out the front. It was fantastic. And
Amazing.
yeah, yeah. And then I think she was gonna have a Roman sort of going, no,
Oh,
running
that's
along on top.
amazing. I love it.
But she didn't have time.
There's always time. There's always
Always
time
time for the
for
Romans, yep.
Jesus.
Yep.
When is Hocktide?
I don't know what Hogtide is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
it was originally part of the holiday. It's the Monday and
Okay.
Tuesday, the second week after Easter. It was an English medieval festival.
Interesting.
Uh, Both the Tuesday and the preceding Monday were the Hock days. The
And it's
week following Easter marked the only vacations of the husbandman's year. So essentially, it's after lambing is kind of done.
hmm.
So we're getting to the bonus round, Mark.
Okay, okay.
Ready?
Yep.
How long is Lent? And technically, this is not Easter because technically it's before
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But bonus question: how long is Lent?
It's always longer than you think it is.
You know what? That's the best answer, because a lot of people say Lent is 40 days, and that's not true. There are 46 days.
Right.
Counting from Ash Wednesday to Holy Saturday, there are 46 days. They
Okay.
say that there's only 40 days because Lent does not include Sundays. That's why.
Oh, no. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And well, and also, uh, I have friends who would often do the no chocolate for Lent thing,
Hmm.
and they would give themselves Sundays as feast days. So they'd sort of have a day off, which I always thought was a bit of a thing. You know, don't do that. Come on, commit. Go
Commit
without the
to the
chocolate.
bit. Commit to the
Yeah,
bit.
commit to the bit. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Second bonus question, and you should know this one, Mark.
Okay.
How was the date of Easter calculated?
Uh, Luna. It's the third Sunday after something happening. I don't
There
know.
are a couple of very specific
Yeah,
councils that happened.
I
So
know that's the thing. I get. Yeah. Go on.
now we celebrate it as the first Sunday after the full moon of the spring equinox.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when we celebrate it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, wasn't always celebrated at this
Uh huh.
time, right? So we talked a
Uh
little
huh.
bit about the Council of Nicaea and how
Yeah.
they tried to unify things, saying that everybody has to follow the same Easter, but then obviously there was a split between the Eastern Orthodox Church and everybody else. So they celebrate Easter at a different time of year.
So you're saying everyone has to play Nicaea? Oh, no, God. I'm so sorry. I have a problem. I really have a
That's
problem.
our show, kid.
I'm in counseling.
But very,
Nicaea counseling. Sorry, no, go on. Sorry.
I'm trying to think of a Whitby joke because the Synod of Whitby in
Yeah.
that happened. Do you know what the Synod of Whitby was, Mark?
I can't remember exactly what happened, but I do
So
know
people
that it's
were
important.
celebrating people, so in Northumbria they were celebrating Easter on one part, a different part, and they were following the Irish calendar, and then some people
Yes,
were
yeah,
on the Roman calendar,
yeah, yeah.
which was a month off. So the Synod of Whitby was convened and they set the date. They rectified the date for Easter
Yeah,
for
yeah.
all of that part of the world.
So with that, that would be an insular and Roman Catholic
Yes.
meeting. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, interesting.
So how'd you do, Mark? How'd you do?
Well, given that I've thrown in bonus points here and there, because like basically I'm at 12.5, you're at 11. So pretty good
You
so far. Yeah,
did pretty well this time.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay, because the Easter Bunny came to visit you, and he has a special gift for you. The gift
Uh-huh.
of further
Further
reading.
reading! Yay! Is it wrapped in foil?
Uh,
We can only hope.
it does come with some chicken eggs attached, along
Okay. Okay.
with our lovely Easter gnome.
Yes. Yes. No, I've seen him on your TikToks. Yep.
Amazing, I love it.
He is lovely.
So for further reading,
Yep.
please see the Origins of History by History Extra, which is the BBC podcast, which is wonderful. Gone Medieval, The Origins of Easter.
Yep.
Stations of the Sun by Professor Ronald Hutton. The
Yep.
Historical Jesus by Dr. Helen K. Bond, and I recommend all her books. Actually, they're fantastic. They're really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, English Heritage has put out a whole list of things commemorating the entire history of Easter. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Have they retracted the hot cross bun thing though?
You know, they have now. I've noticed that they have now written the word possibly.
Ah.
I have a feeling that not only myself who wrote in, I write,
Yep.
everybody write, but I wrote in as well as I'm sure, because as I said, Professor Ronald Hutton is on the board of trustees. Like, how are you gonna?
I could imagine you including a little MP3 that just goes wrong.
You know what? I should have done.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I
Um,
need me in like a bishop's robe with a Pope
yeah,
hat, just
yeah,
going "Rah!" smacking
yeah,
a whiteboard somewhere. It's just like giant like 600 font letters going
yeah,
"Rah!"
yeah, yeah. That'd be
Um
perfect. But
but I
possibly
think
though, possibly that's doing a lot of lifting, a lot of heavy lifting
they
though.
they did add the possibly, and
Yeah.
it's the same thing where they say, they talk about, Eostra, and they say was possibly a goddess. So yes, they've added that to give people the option of deciding whether or not it is. I understand the need for the sensitivity,
Yeah, whatever.
but
They need footfall. They just don't want to annoy people. And also, frankly, let's face it, they don't want staff on the door or in the little ticket huts at these places having someone go, your website's now says it wasn't a thing. Can you please tell me why? And be like, please, I just work here at the weekends. I just please.
whenever I'm moonlighting at the bookshop, there's always one person who comes in and says, "Oh, actually, this book is so and so." And I go, "Oh, honey, I'm not the owner. I can't answer that."
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Yeah.
immediately it just diffuses everything. So you just go,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not the author of that article. I can't
Yeah.
answer. I can't
Yeah.
answer that. And just disappear. As I said to Professor Ronald Hutton a couple times, I said, your greatest virtue is to answer every question I have, and your greatest fault is to have a public email. So
Yeah.
so if
Yeah.
anybody has any questions about it, you can either read his Stations of the Sun. He also has a free article about the Pagan Wheel of the Year, which I recommend. Just look up Ronald Hutton, Pagan Times of the Year, Pagan Wheel of the Year, or just send him an email. But don't tell him I did. I told
On on that note, something that you might like and something the viewers at home might enjoy. Um, Back when I worked at Jorvik, it was quite well known for the smell. So people would turn up and they'd be like, "Oh, it smells awful," because they'd pipe in, you know, authentic smells that were mixed by a smell company somewhere
you.
to
Ooh, that's
yeah.
exciting.
So when
Okay.
you went past the booth, the Viking loo, yeah, there would be like a toilet smell, this kind of thing.
Oh.
Yeah, and people are, all right, it smells horrible. Oh. And but anyway, so people would come in and there'd be folks at the desk who often they would swap out roles. So sometimes they would actually be, often they were actually archaeologists, or they would sometimes be playing Vikings themselves in the museum, but they would also be on the desk. So
Mhm.
so that day they'd be in their grey shirt. Hello, welcome to Jorvik. How many tickets would you like? Okay, would you like the family ticket? Just to say something, that kind of thing. And someone would just say, maybe they just got off and they just exited and they've come all the way around. They've sort of marched up past the queue, pushed past, let me in. And they'll sort of say, you're, you know, this thing is inaccurate in the museum. You need to apologize. I want my money back. And I don't know if he did this all the time, but one guy, he apparently would often go, I don't know anything about anything here. I'm just here for the smell. And, and, like, and people Really? So, like members of staff, like people on this often, you'd have a Viking on the door. They'd just be losing their shit because,
That's amazing. Didn't you say somebody complained about the thread count of your costume?
yeah, yeah. Every year at the Viking festival, which happens in sort of February March, yeah, you'd have reenactors complaining about the costumes. But I still read it, and then sometimes he'd kind of like rub his knees, like, yeah, I'm just here for the smell.
That's the best way
But
to diffuse that kind of
hey, it's a
thing.
great way because that suddenly that person who's really clearly a bit uptight doesn't want doesn't want to engage with that leaves. So yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
great. Fantastic. Well,
yeah.
good job, Mark. Good job.
Grand.
Wishing you a very happy Easter. I hope you eat many chocolate eggs. I've already had too many.
Yeah, I think we have two each in the house at the moment. So yeah,
See, we
they'll
we
be great.
I don't like Cadbury eggs. I don't like the
Uh,
sugar because I don't like the graininess of that.
no,
It's not the flavor. I like the flavor. I don't like
yeah,
the grainy texture of like the sugar. Maybe
yeah,
it's because our Cadbury's is a little bit different, but
yeah.
I'm a plain Jane. I like
Okay,
either a Reese's egg or I like the regular icing coated eggs. That's it.
okay, yeah. Also, there have been Reese's eggs this year. I'll have to buy some for
Of
some
course there are.
In Aldi.
So
Yeah,
there are the regular Reese's eggs
yep,
that are about this big and they have the peanut butter inside, but then there are also the flat eggs. Those
yes,
have
I've
even
seen
more
those.
peanut butter. So
Yep,
they also
yep,
have ones that are in the shapes of carrots as well. Although I
yes,
I cannot recommend giving those to bunnies. Please don't. They're allergic to chocolate.
no.
But they do have the flat ones. And again, the peanut butter to chocolate ratio is always the highest in the shapes. Remember that, kids.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I saw them. I'm like, I've got to get those, 'cause otherwise I'll be told off.
So
So
hopefully, if Mark hasn't been put off too much, we'll have him back for May Day and Bayaltana,
nice,
and we'll talk about May Day customs and maybe even the Green Man.
brilliant. Thanks again for having me.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.